So, all right, folks, anybody that is trying to figure this stuff out, we're going to plan a hunting trip for you on the fly here.
So I've identified this area as it looks potentially good. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start honing in on individual properties. And
hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Standing Stone podcast. Let's see if I can say my own name. We're here today with Ben from OnX Maps. This is one that I am really, really excited for, folks. OnX Maps is a huge resource for me hunting, but I still feel like on an average basis that I'm lost, all right? So many features, there's so many good things, and although it is easy to use, I think that it's underutilized on my aspect, and that's why I reached out to Ben specifically to say, hey, can we set something up that we can help teach people how to use this amazing product that there is? So I've got him here with us today. We're going to be covering some of the major uses and how-tos, and Ben's going to be leading that for us. And then we're going to kind of cover how you can apply this toward training grounds and finding that from a dog training perspective, because Ben himself is a dog man, and we'll get into that a little bit because we have some differences in opinions in that category, I think. But then at the same time, how you can apply that to hunting season. Early season hunting is not that far away, and this is the time to be doing that prep, looking for places to go, getting that permission, trying to find things so you're prepared, rather than doing it after the fact where you show up at properties that somebody else has already pinned down. So with all of that being said, as always, folks, we want to thank you, patrons, being the absolute largest sponsor of all of the content that we put out. It's patreon.com/Standing Stone Kennels, where you can join and help support what we do, but at the same time get help. We have multiple different tiers that allow you to do upwards of get a step-by-step training program guided by Kat and I, where we do weekly or bi-weekly check-ins. And again, that's patreon.com/Standing Stone Kennels. It's the perfect coupler to all of the content that we put out, from the podcast to the YouTube videos. And finally, standingstonesupply.com is anything that we talk about that we use and recommend. That's where you can find it, standingstonesupply.com. All right, Ben, thanks for joining us today. I want to know.
yeah, I'm super stoked.
Yeah, absolutely. You work with OnX Maps. I want to know how long you have been at that, and tell me a little bit about your history, how you got into bird dogs specifically and this industry.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been with OnX for 3 years now. It's crazy to think that it's been 3 years already. So for OnX, I'm the wing shooting manager, which is nice because I get to dabble in everything I love, waterfowl, turkeys, and obviously upland birds. So it's been a great place. But I kind of got my start, kind of the cliche story. My dad taught, I grew up hunting, and he would take me along, and we had short hairs actually growing up. And so I was just enthralled with everything, fur, feathers, fins from a young age. And after that, I kind of fell out a little bit of the upland side of things and transitioned to waterfowl, and lived in North Dakota and hunted my way through college.
Mm-hmm.
And then I decided after college, I didn't want to go and have, I guess you'd call it a real job.
Yeah.
I wanted to work doing what I love. So kind of bounced around from magazines to some video production, and that landed me in Mississippi of all places with Primos, and was down in Mississippi for 5 years. And I just at that time I got back into bird hunting, which Mississippi is outside of woodcock and the occasional quail, is an awful place to live to bird hunt. You have to drive a long way.
I can imagine.
So I was able to come back up to my home here in Minnesota, and I've been when I joined up with OnX. So that's like a really, in a nutshell, background on myself.
So you said back up to Minnesota. So you said growing up, you hunted and fished and did everything with your dad. Was that in Minnesota you grew up?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I grew up just outside of the Twin Cities here in Minnesota. Cool. So pretty much everything from, deer, ducks, birds, a little bit of everything. So it's a great place to grow up.
You said you kind of transitioned into waterfowl. What do you think made the biggest switch with those things? I mean, what was the driving force, and then what kind of pulled you back out of that?
Well, really, I mean, for me, it starts and ends at dogs. We had a short hair that he was just an absolute hunting machine, and it just made it fun, right? And he passed away. He fought like all sorts of stuff. He fought, I think he had coonshound paralysis, he had a heartworm, he had cancer, and made it through all.
Goodness.
And then just, I think, died of old age. But so after he passed, it was just, the lure was kind of gone.
Sure.
And then it was like, okay, at that age, whatever, it's 14, 15 years old. Duck hunting was pretty fun. You got to shoot a lot. It was fast action. And so just, that's kind of how I fell into waterfowling. And then it wasn't until I got my next dog that it kind of really pulled me back into the upland side of things.
That's awesome. So what was that next dog?
So that was Annie. She is a Draughthar, and gosh, she's 8 years old now, 9 years old now.
Yeah.
And so she was the one she was being in Mississippi, awesome duck hunting.
Sure.
We had access to some great property. And so, obviously being a versatile dog, we duck hunted, we tracked deer. And then I took her up to South Dakota. I think was the first time I actually hunted with her for birds. And it was like, wow, I remember why I absolutely love to do this. And then each year I would start taking more and more trips. And then pretty soon it's like, I'm not duck hunting anymore. I'm just saving all my time to go, whether it's to Louisiana to bird hunt or Kansas, South Dakota, North Dakota. All I wanted to do is bird hunt.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now you have more than one dog now, it looks like.
I do. I have, I've got Annie, who's a Draughthar, and also Herb, who is a half brother to Annie, and he also a Draughthar, obviously. And then as of about just over a year ago, I added a little white pointer to the bunch.
Cool.
English pointer named Amos. So
cool. Strong name. I like that.
Yep. Named after Man of the Cloth.
Man
little Jerry Reed song.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Amos Moses.
Well, and I know all of this, folks, because I follow Ben on Instagram, and it's kind of cool. You're an absolutely, whether you're going to admit to this or not, you're a really good photographer, and some of the pictures you take are freaking cool. So,
well, I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
It's definitely one you guys should check out. Ben, what is that? Is it just your full name?
Yeah, I think it's just Ben Brettingen, and I think I'm the only Ben Brettingen in the country, at least. So
on Instagram at Ben Brettingen. Yep. Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So thank you for letting us all know. It sounds like you've got a huge passion for the outdoors, which is awesome. Growing up, I felt the same. I wanted to do something in the outdoors. I told my parents I was going to be a professional hunter and fisher, right? Like all outdoorsy kids kind of say they want to be. I don't know that I could actually be a professional hunter and fisher. When you look at actually filming and doing those kind of things now, it takes away a lot from the experience, or it sure can. Like, we have to wait.
Yeah, I mean, if you're one of the lucky few that happens to get in front of the camera, it's great, but it's still work.
Yes.
When I was down at Primos, I produced the TV show,
okay, cool.
The Truth About Hunting down there. And they see a guy that's running camera, and it's like, that's great. And granted, like I filmed a fishing show for a number of years, and great. You get to see a bunch of cool stuff. But the thing is you're out there working while the best times to hunt, fish, etc. And it's not a 9-to-5 job, right? It's a 1 a.m. to 12 p.m. type of job. So,
exactly.
But all in all, there's a lot of ways to, if you're desirous of getting into the industry, there's a lot of ways to do it. So
100%. Now, with the draughts and a pointer, my question for you is, why the big change? That's a pretty drastic. I mean, granted, both pointing dogs, but there's a lot of difference between a Draught and an English pointer.
Yeah, 100%. It's a huge difference. And what it kind of came down to for me was, living in the South, I did a lot of duck hunting, did a lot of deer hunting, wasn't able to bird hunt as much, just given the location. So I needed a versatile dog, right? And then towards the end of that, so I had purchased 2 dogs down there that I had, Andy and Herbie, just because I needed more horsepower, because I'd go for a trip for 7-8 days and just run them into the absolute ground. So, and then when I moved back up here, it's like, okay, now I can, I'm so close. I can walk up my backyard and hunt pheasants. I'm a few hours away from quail country, sharpies, chickens, etc. And so I wanted a specialty dog.
Cool.
So, and I had hunted with a number of some really good pointers, really good setters, and the ability for them to cover ground, especially when you go out west, like they're not built the same at all. They're a different creature.
That's no doubt. So I've owned a handful of pointers, love pointers, but from a dog industry, kind of when we started, I even looked at the venture of moving that direction. I like them. And I just found like it was a different market to break into, and seemed less financially beneficial than moving the direction of short hairs, where, Jenny, or Ginny, depending on which papers you looked at that I had got from her. Basically, I bought this dog. I didn't buy this dog. There was a gentleman. I worked at a facility up north, and there's a gentleman that brought this dog in, and he liked pointers. He brought him in all the time. He'd buy him started, and he'd hunt him a little bit, and then he'd say, I want him polished. I don't want to finish him up now. And so we get this dog, and he's like, I don't know. She's just not really for me. He's very particular about a few things, like, I don't like her tail. I don't like this. She's kind of him hawing around, right? And this is a long time ago, but still, he's like, I'll just get rid of her. And as much as I understood, that was just like 22 answers to that question. Yep. So then I'll get another one. I'm like, well, literally, if that is the end result for this dog, I'll take it. I can't buy her from you, but I'd take her. He's like, sure, you can have her. I don't care. Okay, cool. So I start with this dog, and we roll through some stuff, and she ends up being absolutely fantastic. But like you're saying, a completely different animal. We went down south, and I'm guiding. If it was 70 degrees or higher, I've got to put most of the other dogs away, but Jenny could run all day. Just tail cracking, rolling on. Didn't even phase her. But we come up north, it could be 45 degrees, right? It's starting to feel comfortable, and she's bristled up, and she's like, oh, it's too cold out here. And then I'm looking up stuff, and one guy said, coat your dog with Vaseline. It'll help them hold the heat in or something. And so I'm out there. I've got this dog covered with Vaseline. It was the biggest, nastiest, disgusting mess of weed seed and Vaseline. And I was like, why did I even think this would be
a farmer drives by you and you're holding Vaseline covered a dog. It's like, boy, what are you doing?
So anyhow, I decided, I trained her, helped her, and she's an absolutely fantastic dog. Retrieved a hand, did everything, just maybe didn't have quite the style he was looking for, but really nice dog. Yeah. And so I go to try and sell her. Like, I'm going to sell this fully finished pointer, right? I got $500 cash, a Dan Wesson 357 Magnum pistol, and a Baikal. Baikal, is that how it's pronounced? It's like a Russian-made, mediocre shotgun, but it was a side-by-side in 28 gauge, so it was really cool. But, probably a total value of roughly $1,500 worth of stuff. And I went, this is not how I can make a living. I'm sorry. It just ain't going to work. Yeah. So anyhow, moving past all of those wonderful things, we are with short hairs. We have short hairs. I love short hairs and, for the things you're talking about, versatility, but we tend to kind of tip our scale of breeding just a smidgen more toward bird dog, because that's my primary focus. And we do some waterfowl hunting, but bird dogs all the way. So,
yeah, it's it's interesting with the pointers. It's like pointers versus short hairs. It's like, I think it comes from the whole field trial side of things, right? So it's like, I've seen fully broke, like unreal good bird dogs. They're not good trial dogs. They sell them for $2,000.
We just need,
and a lot of the times you can't live with those dogs, right? Like my pointer right here is laying. He's all curled up on his blanket, sleeping here, and he's happy as a clam. But a lot of those dogs you can't.
Any specific names in genetics? I know a little bit about pointer lines. What do you got?
So Amos is out of Elhu Sinbad, which is Bob Whaley from up in the Northeast, and obviously did a ton for that line of pointers. So it's Elhu Sinbad, which has got the who's who of Elhu in it, and then Newmark's Surefire Peg, which is also from that whole Elhu. A lot of the same dogs in there. So
another episode, we talked specifically about breeding and coefficients of inbreeding and line breeding and pedigrees and all of that stuff. And we specifically reference the work that he did from a line breeding standpoint in developing a specific, very highly sought after pointer, the LU. And it was primarily based around the book's called Snakefoot. Have you ever seen or read that? Yeah. So it's interesting stuff, how a lot of things do connect. So you have a really nice pointer. You don't just have a pointer. So my uncles and grandpa, they always had, I didn't get to bird hunt with them much growing up, but they always had bird dogs out back, right? And be a pointer, Brittany cross, or a short hair lab cross, or they just had dogs, and they were good dogs, but just dogs. So very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I would love to jump into some demonstration. Just a walkthrough, look at the nitty gritty of the features, how we do this via the computer version, right? And specifically, I'm hoping you can start in, like, just scroll up to your North Dakota, Montana area, so I can take all of your pin notes down real quick before you hide those.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. I'll do that right now. I'll just give it to everyone. I'll just give you a login info.
That's even better. That's even better, so I can use it on the fly.
Yeah. So let me, I'll get us rolling here.
So the goal here, folks, would be have a better understanding of how powerful this tool is and the ways in which you can use it. Once we get some good understanding on how things work, we can move into how they apply to not only hunting, but also training.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll just kind of do a quick run through on kind of what it is. If you're not familiar with OnX, it's a GPS mapping system for hunters specifically. So what that means is it will give you kind of the crux of the product is private and public landowner data for for the whole country. So for example, here we're in northern Kansas, and what I can do is I can zoom in and I can see, okay, this is U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service land, and then I've got all of the landowners. I can scroll down and see their tax address, how many acres they own.
When you were zoomed out too, you could actually see individual zones, which are like the deer hunting zones. That was a layer that was on there.
Exactly. I think I have. So this is all found under layers here. So I go into Kansas and, like, for example, I don't really need Kansas deer zones if we're talking bird hunting. So you can toggle all of these on and off. So like right now, I've got private, public, walk-in areas. Different states have different things, possible access, which we can get into that a little bit later. So there's two products, all 50 states, which is our elite product, or a single state, which is premium. And then with the elite, there's a number of great elite benefits that you get with that. We've added a number of waterfall and upland companies that you can get discounts and special experiential benefits from doing that. So back to the map here. So what happens is, so we're on the web map. We're on a computer right now, but you can also take this in the palm of your hand on your phone and take it in the field with you. So normally what I do is I do all my planning on the computer, and then scouting, etc. When I'm in the field, then it's like, okay, I can just go to a milk run of spots that I found off the internet and sitting at my computer here at work. And what it's allowed me to do is just travel and hunt more confidently. I was a user of the product before, and then when I started to work here, I just really got the opportunity to learn a lot more about it. And now it's like I could go, I could say, all right, let's go hunt chukar. And I could be like, okay, I've never hunted chukar before. What do I even do? I watch a few YouTube videos, and I would watch a few YouTube videos, find a few spots on the map of what I'm looking for. And I would drive whatever it is, 24 hours out there. And I would be confident to say, okay, I'll be able to get in the bird. So that's really what OnX does for me in terms of like my confidence level, which I think for everyone out there is huge. You want to go take a trip somewhere, this is going to help you out immensely. So, when I talk about the app, what I like to talk about, kind of how I like to frame it, is frame it, like versus just going through and talking through features. I like to put it in some sort of perspective. So we can cover dog training, like how to, dog train, or we should probably, if you don't mind, just start talking about hunting, because that's a great way for people to understand how these tools work.
Absolutely.
That's cool with you.
Because then we can get into utilizing the map features like you were talking about. You find all your spots, and we can even show what that looks like.
And all these features that we're going to talk about here, all these different tools and layers, then you'll get a good understanding of like, okay, the power isn't in just like one or two of the features. It's how you direct them at the species, the area, how you want to hunt. You bring all those tools together, and then it's just like heaven's gates open. It's like, wow, I can go do anything. So, so we can, let's just say we're going to South Dakota. We're going to go chase pheasants. How is OnX useful to your hunting? And you've never been there before. So
let's pull up. If you're going to be, you have a specific place you're looking for, you're going to pull up, or okay.
No, we're just going to go hunt.
Let's go over to winter. I've got a lot of experience in that area specifically, and I can pull up some different things that we can look at and know exactly what those look like in real life too. So if you go to winter, and then go north there on the highway. So you go west and then north there on the highway.
West. Oh yeah, I'm 183 here.
You're like 183 headed north.
Yep. Further north. Up to the
before
river?
the river, and then you see that walk-in right there.
Walk-in right here. Yep.
So this is one a lot of people get really protective over spots, and I'm happy to understand that, right? But at the same time, I'm also happy to help people. So maybe not every single spot, but I know this is one that doesn't get hunted overly heavily and has a lot of opportunities, really cool opportunities on. So we actually have, if you look here at that property there that's private, it says Witten Farms.
Let's see here. Which
just right up to the highway there, just to the east.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So that says Witten Farms. That's the property I've guided leased and guided on for the last 10 years, basically. Now, that green row right along the highway there, that's a shelter belt.
Yep.
And if you zoom in, how far can you zoom in with that?
You can zoom in really far. Just the quality.
You can definitely tell, folks, that looks like a bunch of little trees or bushes or something, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And like, so if I was going to break down this property here, like obviously, this is some sort of crop fields. You can see the tractor, tractors going through it. And so one layer that you can utilize, I use it a ton for pheasant hunting, is this crop data layer. And what it's going to do is it's going to show you what was planted on there the previous year.
Dude.
So
I did not know that that's in there.
Yeah. So, with the whole regulations, USDA stuff, they can't publish like what is planted, but with a basic understanding of like crop rotation in the area, you'll get a pretty good idea of what's planted there. So let's put my knowledge to the test here. I've spent a little time out there, but not a whole lot. So looks like there's corn over here now this would have been last fall. So I guess I can tell you maybe what's planted there this year. So we have corn. Ooh, let's figure out what is this. Soybeans. Sorghum. So see how that turns orange. So is that all sorghum this year?
Is it this year? I don't know what's planted this year. But
last
2021, yes, that was all. It was all milo. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. So
sorghum family.
If you're going to find new spots, like let's take this walk-in, for example, like I can see why there are birds here, right? I mean, food is absolute king for pheasants. And when you talk about sorghum and corn and sorghum, milo are like number one food sources. So anytime you can find food sources adjacent to, whether it's public or private, like that's going to be a huge magnet for birds. And obviously, this area, it looks like, just these tree belts are going to hold a ton of birds, but then also depending on what this cover is, it looks like it's fairly sparse.
Short grass prairie. Yeah.
So, if I was going to hunt public land out here, even though this doesn't look as ideal, being that there's such a great food source right here, like, man, I can promise you, you will find pheasants in here, in this drainage right here. Like, without a doubt, this is classic. You can see it's a little bit darker, a little bit more texture to it. It means it's going to be, the darker indicates generally the taller cover, lighter indicates a little bit less tall cover, and you can tell that there's might be some cattails and some water. So I would be shocked if there weren't birds in there and all of this stuff through here. So.
And that's 100% spot on. So those thicker drainage areas, especially as you go further to the south there on that piece, you've got those run. That's all just like there's some cattails mixed in that with some different cane varieties and grasses. I mean, it's just all wild stuff. But those have birds in them, and then up as that starts to drain, can you throw like elevations in there that'll show a little more of which direction that's moving?
Let's do this right here. So you can also go into 3D, and now with a lot of this stuff, it's especially in the Great Plains, not a whole lot of elevation. So what you can do is we have this exaggeration slider, so you can really see what it actually looks like on the ground, especially if it's a little bit more flat.
Dude.
Yeah. So like I can see 100% why there's birds, like these big low areas.
So that where you're looking at there is thicker grass and stuff. And there's some, I don't know if they're exactly plum bushes, but I think they are like a bush type of material, like.
Yeah.
Woody
some
cover.
Woody cover in here. It looks like.
I say plum bushes. That's what we've got in Kansas, and
like
sand plums. So they're
the sand plums.
I don't think they're sand plums, but they look like, I've heard them referred to as buckbrush. Like it's just woody cover that about 6 foot tall, 6 foot tall.
Probably in this area, like just plum thickets.
Yeah.
So
you see that drainage runs all the way down to, and there's a pond, and that pond is actually on the private ground again. There's several little ponds along the way, but so that, folks, if you can follow along and find this, is an excellent walk-in spot. And you can follow that drainage all the way down, clear past the corner of the private there, all the way down into the bottom. And that, there's another pond right there. So just off of that pond to the west, it gets really thick down through the bottom of that again. And that is, I mean, there are not only sharptails and mostly sharptails, not very many chickens right there, but there will be sharptails up in more to the hills to the right. They kind of set up on top of stuff, but the sharptails in that area, as well as pheasants. We moved a lot of pheasants out of that, like, because I don't hunt the private ground when I'm not specifically guiding and stuff like that. I just, but I've worked some of that in there. So cool. I had no idea about, because I've seen the 3D mode like on your phone, but this works a million times better. At least you're better at running it, because I hit through.
Well, the thing is, you know, normally like this out west, this works great, right? Because you're talking significant more elevation. And like for me, this area, I mean, if you're standing there, it probably seems like it's got some elevation, right? And here it doesn't look like it, but if you use that exaggeration, okay, that's probably more what it looks like right here than that first look.
Yeah, that'd be pretty accurate. That's crazy.
Yeah. So just, a fun thing to use to help find spots, help hone in on spots. So you were talking Sharpies, and then back to the crop layer here, you know, Sharpies aren't going to rely on as much corn and soybeans as they are grains. Alfalfa is a big one. Wheat. So if you're, you know, let's just say you're looking for Sharpie spots, you flip those on. It's like, okay. See this. So another thing, like if I was going to hunt an area and I didn't have private access, like I would not go to this spot, for the reason that if you look around here, there are not very many pieces of public land. So I show up to this walk-in spot and all of a sudden Ethan's standing there. It's like, well, dang it. I wanted to hunt this. Now you're there. So I personally, I'll find areas that have a little bit more like a handful of properties in the area. So I have a plan B, I have a plan C. So like this area example, it looks like pretty dang good Sharpie country. Probably, you know, you can probably find pheasants in here as well, just being in South Dakota, but this just kind of screams more Sharpie. And you look on some of this walk-in land, it's like, okay, you can see this is showing up that green color alfalfa. That's
the
fantastic.
Yellow, the wheat.
Looks like you get some
the
of these.
Gold.
The gold, I think, is tribal land.
Okay. There's a bit of that out there.
Yep. At Rosebud. So yeah, it's like, I would be shocked if you didn't find Sharpies. There's going to be Sharpies in this stuff. You can see some of the bushes we were talking about, like right here, next to alfalfa. The nice thing with alfalfa too is that's going to be on more of like a 4 to 7 year rotation, versus corn is pretty much every other year. So no matter where in the country you are, generally the big crop types are going to be in there. You know, you can see all these different ones. I'd be hard pressed to find any peanuts around here. Yeah. So yeah, it depends on where you hunt, right? So there's all this opportunity to help learn that area better. And especially when you've never been to an area before, it's like, if I'm looking for pheasants, is there even corn in this area at all? You can go ahead and flip on the corn layer and say, okay, yep, there's corn. They butt up to these pieces of public property. It just gives you a better picture of what it's going to look like when you get there. So kind of, again, combining those different tools together to paint a better picture for you.
So let's find an area in, you can be a different part of the state or wherever, it doesn't really matter. Let's find an area that you would specifically say, I want to go hunt pheasants in.
Yeah. So let's just say I'm driving over from Minnesota and I was like, I want to go hunt pheasants. I've never these areas I probably haven't been to, but I could pretty well tell you there's going to be birds there. So the first thing actually what I do is I use a lot of is I will use the Pheasants Forever forecast. And this is helpful just to get you in the right area.
Sure.
Right? Because if I've never been to South Dakota before and all of a sudden there's a terrible drought and it's killed everything or rainfall or whatever. So Pheasants Forever puts out one for prairie birds as well as for pheasants. For you look here for all these states pretty much they'll write a report up for pheasants. So this will at least give you an area of the state to start based on, their regional field reps, what they're seeing, what the habitat conditions are looking at like. So that'll give you a good idea of where to start. So let's just say they say, all right, the reports around the eastern part of South Dakota are really good. Let's go around here. So the first thing what I'll do is I'll look at, all right, what are the big cities around the area? And I will avoid them. So Watertown's a big one. Brookings, obviously Sioux Falls is big. So I pretty much, draw an imaginary line like Sioux Falls. Like, let's just say I'm not going to hunt within 100 miles of Sioux Falls, 50 miles of Brookings, etc. Because that's just getting us away from the large population densities. So, all right, I'm going to go just start cruising then, right? And look for densities of public lands, and not only densities of public lands, but different types, because what the habitat you find on a WPA, a waterfowl production area, is not going to be the same habitat that you find on a walk-in area, which is privately owned and you're able to access it, or hunters are able to access it. It's going to be different types. A lot of times you'll get crops on them, right? Where a WPA you'll generally never find crops on.
So there's individual layers that you can break those out. Like we can eliminate the walk-in places and just show WPAs, or is it more?
Yeah, so like that's going to show up in your government lands. Your government's going to be state lands, WMAs, and then walk-ins is going to be a separate layer as well. But in saying that, like WPAs are like a lot of times just as good. It's just going to be, they're just going to be different types of habitats. So 1 year, let's just say it's crops are still in, and a lot of these walk-in areas will potentially have crops in them, and that's not going to bode well for hunting, just because you're going to be, all those birds are going to be in crops. So it's just different, right? And that gives you the opportunity to shift your game plan in case you get there and something.
So I want to break this down a little more. We do have a lot of people that reach out to us and say, I don't hunt, right? I got a dog. I want to get into this. Yeah. And we, that have hunted quite a bit, you say you don't want to hunt the areas with the crops, even though we just explained that the crops are where you want to look for birds, right? So just if you have standing crop, it's very difficult to hunt. The birds utilize that food and shelter. They're in there. Typically, these fields are going to be anywhere from a quarter section to a half section, meaning 160 to 300 some acres, give or take, even bigger sometimes. But you would need a small army to be able to effectively walk that, because birds will just run around you and you're basically just walking. Yeah. Now, maybe will you get a bird? Maybe, but you're also going to likely lose your dog in the extents of the cover. It's also road, so dogs want to run the roads. That's the path of least resistance for them. So when we're saying don't go hunt standing crop, that's usually the reasons why. But sometimes you can, if you're at the right time, you can hunt the edges of standing crop and be okay if you've got a small group or something like that. So,
yeah, exactly. And for the crops, like they talk about the golden hour, last light, when those birds are coming from standing crops back into the fields. So in the early season, like in this area, corn is generally taken out in November, end of October at the earliest, generally early
Mm-hmm.
November. Um, and if you're hunting an area next to a standing cornfield, like you could walk that at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and not see a single bird, and then come back at last light, right before sunset, and you'd swore somebody came with a semi truck
Just
full of
dumped
pheasants and just
them.
dumped them all into the fields. So, but that's a great point in terms of that delineation between standing crops and then cut crops. So I'm mostly referencing when I'm talking about finding good areas is I'm in the understanding that the crops have already been
Yeah,
cut.
and for
Just
South Dakota, like you said, end of October, first part of November, typically for that. I would say that
Yep.
historically, the first to second week in November has been the hottest for the last 8 to 10 years. I mean, that's now granted. Last year, stuff didn't get all cut forever. They were dry, and in our area specifically, anyhow, and crop production was horrible. So if it didn't get chopped early, then it got stuck there, and there was no point in going to try and harvest it, and because it got wet then later in the season. So all of those things play in. But I would say historically, openers are not the greatest time to go venture into all of these public grounds either. Give it a day or two to breathe if you have flexibility to do that, and then watch those conditions. If you have any flexibility in your trip, which sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, looking at those things, talking to locals when you can.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? You get the young, dumb birds who have never been hunted. It's a first crack at them for the year. The other thing is, on the other side of it is everyone is out there because it's opening day. So, so let's go back here. So let's just say this area, you notice there's quite a few properties, right? Like you have, if you click on this, you have a WMA, wildlife management area. You can see it says right there. We've got WPAs, which are these green ones, and then also a number of walk-in areas. And so like this has got a great density of public land. So again, your plan B, C, D, E, and also, a lot of these properties, you're not going to be hunting the whole piece. You're going to be targeting the key areas. So like this one, for example, it's 160 acres. I might only walk certain parts of this. So you're going to want more than one property to hunt in a day. You're going to want 3 or 4.
So let's as we continue through this, let's take this a little bit. You found a really good area there. I don't know if this is someplace you've hunted before actually, or you just
nope,
okay. So what's
have.
That town just to the right?
Salem.
So Salem, South Dakota?
Yep.
So, all right, folks, anybody that is trying to figure this stuff out, we're going to plan a hunting trip for you on the fly here. All right, Salem, South Dakota.
Exactly. Yep. So I've identified this area as it looks potentially good. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start honing in on individual properties and saying, okay, this one is worth my time to hunt. And I'll show you what a good property looks like versus what maybe a property that I probably wouldn't hunt looks like. So a lot of the times what I'll start with is I will turn on my crop layers again, and kind of going back to rotations. Corn isn't planted every single year. They're going to have to rotate that just because it's hard on the soil. So what I'll do is I can turn on soybeans, and generally they'll rotate it every other year in this area. So if it's soybeans last year, it's going to be corn this year.
How are we going to figure that out for new areas? Is there, is it just watching? Is that just your information, like your knowledge? Is it?
You can call, if you don't, like if you're just getting into hunting, you're new to it, you can call up, you could call up the local co-op in town and just say, hey, I'm coming to town, looking for areas. What is the normal crop rotation in this area? Like some instances, like on center pivots, sometimes we'll plant corn 2 times in a row, but generally, as a rule of thumb, they will not plant corn almost anywhere 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
Generally,
Pivots, folks, are going to look like big circles
assumption.
in a square. That's irrigation, for anybody who doesn't know that too. It's just an irrigation or giant sprinkler for a field of corn.
Yeah, you don't see much of it up in this area, but down by you, I bet in southern Kansas especially, you probably see quite a
especially the further south you or west from us you get to. There's even a lot more where it's almost just perfect squares with circles in them everywhere. So
yeah, exactly. So generally, I'll just flip on the soybeans because you can see this area is dominated by corn and soybeans. Almost every field is either one or the other. So I'll flip on soybeans, and then I'll start looking at properties that are adjacent because, again, soybeans last year means corn this year. So I'm going to go look at this property right here, this WPA. Looks like you can access it from the south or the west here. It's bordered almost all by corn for the most part. And then I'll start honing in on the habitat. So it looks like this was probably mowed. You can kind of see these strips in here. In like a year like last year, there was a ton of emergency haying and grazing just because it was such a dry year. But if you look here, there are objectives. So there's soybeans here. And if I look here again, the thicker the cover, the darker it is, and it almost looks fuzzy. See how it's got some textures to it, right? Like this area through here. That's just, you can tell that's going to be a lower area, just because there's cattails, right? They look like cattails. It's darker. It's going to be thicker cover. So this would be an area. What I would do if I was hunting this, I would probably park somewhere down. I would probably park somewhere down in this area here, just away from the property, so I could get ready, not spook birds. And then what I do is I'll put a waypoint down on it, so I know, okay. Actually, I take that back. So the other thing to consider is wind direction when you're accessing a property. So I'm going to start over here. Generally, predominantly, you are going to have a west or northwest wind for the most part in the fall. Obviously, that changes. So that means that I'm going to try to mostly access everything from the southeast. So I'm hunting my dogs into the wind.
Into the wind or crosswinds if possible. Trying to avoid the wind at your back, but you're going to have that. I mean, it's going to happen.
Yep. And what I tell people is just, if you've got to come around, right? You've got to come back to your truck at some point. So hunt a lot of people are gung ho, and let's just say it's a south wind right here, and we park here, and this is the good cover. A lot of people just want to get in there and hunt, right? Get into birds right away. Well, you're going to be hunting all of this prime area with the wind. So what I'll tell people is, hey, maybe start over here and work all of this, like some marginal habitat with the wind, circle around, come down this edge that's got crops through this thicker cover, come work that down into the wind then. And you'll end up, then you just walk back to your truck on the road here.
Loops are good. Otherwise you end up at the back end of the property and you got to just like deadhead into the, on the way back. And what are we doing here? I don't know. Just walking through.
Yeah. So if this is let's just say it's a straight north wind, what I'm going to probably do is park somewhere along here. And I use waypoints a ton. This is a burner account here. I don't have all these waypoints are just fake accounts or fake waypoints just from playing around like this. But on my real one, I think I've got like 4,000 waypoints. Night. And what I tell people is you've got to be good about labeling waypoints, because if I just use, like, when you add a waypoint, it defaults to this X. In 5 years, I might not know what the heck. Why did I drop a waypoint? Yeah. Why are these, like, was I deer hunting there? Did I find something? Did I not find something? So
there's even there's even labels that you have just for upland game or then pheasant specific, isn't there?
Yeah. exactly. So you can click on, pheasant or upland, and we're going to be adding more as well. Quail you can add. So I'll always label everything, and I also color coordinate it. So like this is an area I want to park. So we've got a parking icon. I'll click on that, and then I'll leave it. I changed it to yellow because yellow for me means spots that I haven't been to that I've just scouted. Blue are spots that I've been to. I've been successful. Purple is areas that I've scouted on the internet. I maybe didn't hunt them, or I drove by them. I confirmed that the cover is good, that there should be birds there. And then I'll use black for areas that I've hunted. The cover wasn't good. Like that's a sign for me. Like
don't black means don't go back.
Isn't it worth it? Yeah. So yeah. So then I'll park or I'll say, okay, I'll park here. And then I would just plan it out in my head. Say, okay, I'd walk down here and hunt these thicker patches.
Can we throw that 3D on there to look at this?
Yeah, we can for sure.
Now, while we're doing that here, just so y'all know, Salem, South Dakota has everything from a motel to as nice of accommodations as a Comfort Inn and Suites. So these would be things depending on the time frame that you'd want to book ahead of time, but easy place to bomb in there and stay. It also looks like they have a handful of restaurant, diner, bar setups. So there's food there unless you want to camp and pack it yourself in. So
yeah,
it looks like a nice little town.
And these areas like this is not the only one. Like we want to give you the tools to go out and go to a new area and find them for yourself. Right. So feel free, like these areas are all over South Dakota, right? So you can replicate this across the state and find, more honey holes and all your spots. So this is pretty flat though, isn't it?
It does look pretty flat.
I mean, I've got the exaggeration jacked up, but you can definitely tell that these are the lower areas, which makes sense. Thicker grass because the water collects there. So we parked right here, walk in here, probably hunt this, work our way up to this one. From there, I would probably keep going up to the road here next to this, try to stay next to the sorghum. Hit this, probably hit this pocket here. And it doesn't look like there is a ton around this lake. It looks like there might be a little strip of cattails and a bit of a bank. So, there might be on dry years, like last year, this was a great area because areas like this were a great area because next to water, right? You've got a water source for the birds, as well as, the cattle aren't going to graze this. They're not going to hay this. And it's a thin, manageable strip. So that's another part that I see people struggle with when they're looking for good areas to hunt is, well, if this area is good, like, let's just say this strip. Yeah. Like we're telling you right now, like this is good cover. We've got this handy thing called the line distance tool right up here. My internet is slow, but so you'll click on this and it'll tell you if my internet would work, it would tell you. So essentially I can click and make two marks and it'll show you how the distance between those two marks. So I'm guessing this is probably 50 yards from here to here. And that's manageable. You can hunt that with 2 or 3 people, but what people get into is they'll say, well, if cattails are good or that thick cover is good, then
if a little's good, more is better.
Then what? Yeah, exactly. And then all of a sudden, it gets this is going to be wet, but all of a sudden this freezes. Like, wow, this must be really good. There's a ton of habitat there. But again, back to your cornfield comment, exactly the same thing. I mean, this is going to be 400 or 500 yards across. And those birds are going to be running around you. you're not going to have a good
exactly. You just you may see a few birds blow out the end or something like that. You know, that's the same thing that can happen, which is going to happen anywhere you're at. That's a part of hunting wild birds, but yeah, definitely less manageable.
Yeah. By using that line distance tool, you'll be able to figure out, you know, how big these covers are. And generally, like, depending on the amount of people you have, like if it's you and I going hunting with a couple dogs, I'd say I don't like to hunt areas that are probably wider than, say, 200 yards. And as it comes down, well, for cattails, for grass, it changes a little bit, but cattails, it's notoriously hard to pin birds in. So just making it manageable and making it a good opportunity for you to get in birds. The other thing you notice is diversity in here. There's going to be there's light grass, there's dark grass, there's a few trees in here. You've got water, you've got, you know, these little potholes everywhere. So if you look at a map and there's like, oh, there's a lot going on in this spot, right? Like there's different pockets of cover. There's different bands of cover everywhere. You can just kind of see that diversity, right? Whereas let's try to find a spot that might not be as desirable of an area. So this is pretty good still here. Yeah, I mean, like all these areas, like this one would still probably be good because you've got a lot of edges. But if you saw an area that just looked like this, you know, it's not my favorite just because there's nothing to concentrate the birds. And then you know, you can't do that milk run like we talked about where you're hitting only the best areas. So
just ends up being one. It just ends up being too much. And just like the crops are too much or the cattails can be too much, you can get into just a solid field of CRP that's too much. You know, it's just too big. And, you know, there are a couple different ways to hunt that. And I've hunted with guys that's like, we'll hunt a quarter or 160 acres of straight grass, right? And we'll walk 3 people wide to one end and then shovel down and walk back and then shuffle down and walk all, and you just walk back and forth across this 160 acres 15 times. And then by the time you get to the end, you've kind of herded all of the birds. And that's a big thing that we look at, or I look at from a guiding standpoint. And I have to explain to people that for me, pheasant hunting is a lot about pressure. And, you know, the wild birds are wild birds, and we can adjust ourselves and how we get set up and everything else to appropriately pressure the birds in a general direction that allows us to then hunt them again or have the opportunity to truly hunt them. So some of those bigger cattail pods, there's one on the private ground they hunt. It's we call it the honey hole, right? You know, or I mean the general term. But it's a giant slough, and it's full of cattails and kochia, which kochia is like a 4-letter word to farmers in the state, and anybody that's ever had to try and walk it, it's tough. It can be bad. So, but there's a lot of birds in it, and it's basically impossible to get enough people around it to truly do. So, what we're able to do in that situation is get enough pressure in the right direction, and it basically pushes all of the birds, or most of the birds, if we do it right, into the direction of small drainages, like what we're looking at here, those more manageable pieces. And then you can come back through and you can actually work those drainages, and then you get the opportunity to kill birds there. And people are like, they're all blowing out. We got to move. We got to do this. I'm like, no. You need to just trust me. We're going to go kill them over there in a minute, okay? We just got to get them out of here first.
Yeah, and then that's a great point. So, like with this spot here, if you're working it up here, where are those? A lot of those times, those birds might, depending on what this is here, they might go over here, and this is on ground that you can hunt. So, hey, maybe you want to push it. Maybe you want to drive up this road here and push it back this way, because a lot of those times, those birds, you know, you might be hunting into the wind, but they're going to squirt out into these little objectives, right? These pockets of good cover, or
they're used to being hunted and they know where they can escape to. So they want to go that way no matter what, you know, and then you've got birds trying to come right at you instead of flying away from you because they know where they weren't trying to. They get pressured into that. Like they learn that pattern of I can escape this route, and that takes a little experience to understand. You got to be there and see it happen. But now, if that property over there that you were looking at with the other different drainage just to the west here, that one,
this one
is that tribal ground again, or is it private ground?
So I've got the soybeans on here.
Similar.
So that's going to be,
so it's soybeans all around that drainage. That'd be a cool area to hunt as well, but it is private, right?
Yep. This is private. You can see the landowner.
So how do we, how can we go about that? Cause we can hunt private ground if we get permission, right?
Correct. Yeah. So if you want to go ask them, you can click on the parcel, and here it says this guy lives out in Deadwood, South Dakota. So to be able to find his house around town, you're going to be looking for a long time.
Yeah, sure. We've got a name though, right? So.
Yep. So White Pages is a great. You Google his name a lot of times on like White Pages.
Hey, do you happen to own some property out by Salem, South Dakota? Yes, sir. Yes, I do. Yep. And then a lot of times with that, what you're getting is the taxpayer, right? That's what whoever's paying the taxes on the property. And a lot of times, if they don't live local, they lease that to someone that either has the hunting rights or has the farming rights and control over the hunting rights, or just the farming rights and they control the hunting rights. And when you talk to those folks, then you could say, hey, I'm trying to plan a trip. Do you allow people to hunt? It would just be me and my one buddy, or we've got a big group, explain the situation. And I mean, it's probably more difficult now than it was 20 years ago, but it's not impossible. Yeah, sure. There are still people that are happy to let you hunt if you're respectful and if you are a quality steward of the land.
Yeah, exactly. So, just for example, like, let's just say we want to hunt this drainage. What I was just doing while you were talking is like, okay, so this is Jeffrey. Well, you can tell this is family land, must be, because the lake is named after him. So they must have been here for a while. But okay, here's a Wayne here. Here's a Karen, right? So, well, I might look at, this. Okay, so that far. Okay, boom, here we go. Family limited partner. Odds are that the person who farms this land either lives here or this is where their shop is set up at. Yep, Salem right here. So odds are these people probably farm this ground and would be the gatekeepers for access. So that's just something easy you can do even beforehand, before you even leave. Hey, I could call up and call them up and say, hey, do you find their number? Do you allow hunting? Love to stop by regardless and just meet you and learn the area a little bit more. 100%. Because that goes so much further than a phone call, right? Then you meet them, and maybe you won't be able to hunt them next year, but after the third year of stopping to talk to them, all of a sudden they're like, oh, it's great to see you again. Let's go to the bar and have a beer, or hey, I'd be happy to buy you dinner type deal. And that's kind of how great way to make inroads in an area.
And it's an interesting, I try and do, it's a little something, like wherever you're from, you've probably got something that your area is known for that's not very expensive. It doesn't have to be an elaborate thing, but like down here, there's a lot of Amish folks, okay? And there's they have quite a few dairies. And these little dairies, the grandma of the family or whatever has a little homemade bakery type shop attached to this. And specifically right here, there's a place that I go down to and I get toffee, okay? It's a little Ziploc bag of homemade toffee, and I carry like pounds of this stuff. You just freeze it and just carry stuff. And I'm like, hey, this is from, just right down the road from us. Thanks for letting us hunt. This is something you can't get anywhere else. It's not, and little things like that add a lot to the situation, because most people that I've come across this anyhow, I don't know if you feel the same, but there's a lot of people that farm and own ground that don't hunt and don't care to. So they maybe have some family that they do give permission to or what have you, but it's that's how we hunted a lot of the ground. It's just, we talk to the guy in town, and the guy says, well, I know Barry's got some property and he's usually pretty good. You go talk to Barry. Barry's a cool guy. He's like, oh yeah, we see him every day when we're running out there to check cattle up on the hill, like, okay, well, what is it? He's, oh, there's a few of them, I don't know. So you get out there and 40 birds come off the top of this hill. It's, they know they're out there, they're doing the thing. And, sometimes you get lucky that way. Other times, mix in your public grounds too. And this is an absolutely fantastic way to scout them.
Yeah. And then to your point, once you get one inroad, then the dominoes start to fall, right? They're like, oh, Steve, like, yeah, of course you can come hunt there. And then all of a sudden you use Steve's neighbors over there and hanging out in the farmyard, and you talk to them. He's like, well, you can hunt my, 160 up here. And I play it as a long game, right? Like I might not get a hunt there that year, but 100%. 5 years from now, what ground could I potentially have just by not being in a hurry, being nice, just genuinely talking to people.
Yeah, so that's huge, man. It's huge. It's amazing how much hunting, and here's the part that this is a thing that I will say bothers me just a little bit. Okay. So you listen to different podcasts, you listen to different people talk, and there's two different approaches to looking at hunting. And there is the outside looking in, talking about how it's horrible. And then there are the people that do it and don't really talk about it a whole lot, other than the fact that they love doing it and they're out there doing it, and they're usually too busy doing it to really talk about it. And then there's the folks that fall in, it's a small collection, but they like romanticize to the extreme the process. Like for me, it's not that way. Okay. I love being in nature. I love being out there. I love working with my dogs. I also like finding and shooting birds. That's part of it for me. If not, I would probably just stay at home and be in nature or whatever, and, but there's so many people, and I'm in the industry, right? We've got dogs, everything else, but I was thinking about it the other day. There isn't a single person that I hang out with, interact with, friends with, long-term friends with, that doesn't have some connection to either dogs or hunting in my life. So the amount of impact that bird dogs and hunting has made on me is huge. Outside of immediate family, everybody that I have with me, right, is and part of my tribe, if you will. It's all bird dog related. It's all hunting related. And these relationships just continue to grow. Like I got a ton of people just call up, like you're talking about, to call up, talk to the farmer and ask him how, things are going this year. And if he wants any crappie when we come up this fall, right? Those kind of things are, it's just cool. You meet a lot of really cool people if you try.
Yeah, for sure. And then, a lot of areas 10 years into it, it's like you show up to the bar or the restaurant and all of a sudden, 20 people there. And it's just like, okay, that's a community. It's your home away from home. And I get a kick. I mean, don't get me wrong. To your point, I don't go on walks. I don't like walks unless it's for a purpose. If I'm training dogs or hunting. My wife asked, do you want to go for a walk? No, I don't want to go for a walk. But she could phrase it like, oh, we better go on a walk. It's getting ready for hunting season. It's like, okay, I'll do it then.
I love it.
But yeah. So yeah, it's so cool to get interwoven in those communities and get all, access to a whole bunch of spots and meet a whole lot of cool people.
100%. So that was an absolutely, I learned a ton from watching. Like I use waypoints. I use the distance marking. I map out specific places. I mark on my individual properties that I have access to. I will mark out and draw boxes around, like this here is a shelter belt. This here is a good pocket. Like the cover that you can see, I'll go ahead and draw shapes around them and label them and things like that for my own head to remember. But then utilizing waypoints. So we did a do-it-yourself exactly like we just tried to do here. I tried to find a few places, but I definitely was not anywhere near as good as you are at this. And but then every place that we found birds, I color-coded and marked and set those things up. So if I ever get the opportunity to go back in that area, I know which ones should be the better shot. Nothing's guaranteed in hunting, but which ones should be the better chance. And that's the key.
Yeah. And another thing that, especially for people like that I see that are coming from like down south, or they're getting into hunting, and we're talking about like, okay, this cover looks good from aerial. And then a lot of people sit there and like, I have never been in that area, like never been to South Dakota, never pheasant hunted. Like, how in the heck am I supposed to even know what good cover looks like, right? And so for me, the biggest connection is being able to tell what something is by looking it on satellite and knowing what that actually looks like on the ground.
Well,
that's the biggest connector. Once you are able to do that in the areas you hunt, that is a complete game changer.
And the crop thing was insane. I didn't know that the crop feature was there, because it's always like, well, that looks like crop ground, but I don't have any idea what it currently is. You know, I mean, that's cool.
Yeah. So one trick here I'll share really fast is we're gonna go back to your spot here near Winter, and I'm gonna show you how I identify what habitat looks like on the ground. So I'm in Google Maps now, and so what I'll do is, for example, I say like, okay, let's just say I don't know what this is. Like, is this cedars? Is it 20-foot tall trees? What is that? So I'll go, this is along a major highway, right? So I can, actually I'll go on OnX here, and I'll say, okay, I want to see what this looks like. So I'll click on it. You're able to copy the waypoints right here. And then I'll go into Google Maps. And if you look at this little orange guy in the corner here, you ever see those Google street cars driving around with all the cameras on top? That's what they're doing. Anywhere with a blue line, I can drop that guy, and I can see what it looks like. So there's your property right here. Like, and granted, I don't know when this is from, but
so that's definitely
like now
old,
I know,
because those shelter belts are mature. They're like almost 15 feet tall now.
Yeah. So,
but it does give you an idea. You can see what's happening there.
Yeah, exactly. So I did that a lot when I was got hunting a little bit more in Montana. That really helped me, because I watch YouTube videos of people out hunting in Montana, and I'd see what that cover looked like. And then I would go and try to identify stuff that looked good on the map, and then look at that Google Street View to get an understanding of what that actually looked like. So like, we'll just find a prime piece of cover, and actually we'll just go, I don't know if we'll be able to go back to where we were, because it's got to be along a major road.
Oh, yeah.
So, well, we'll be able to see this one for sure. So like, see what this cover looks like right here. So yeah, like again, we talked about these little patches, like that's going to look good. Thankfully, this is right on 94. So I'll go copy my waypoint. I'll get out of here, paste it. It's going to take me right to that spot. You know, you can tell it's the same thing. Grab my little orange guy, drop him on there. Bingo. I can see, you know, must be from the spring, but you can tell what kind of grass is there. You can see that there's a marsh. Like,
all the cattails along there, or thicker cover.
You're gonna find birds right here. That's a perfect width of cattails. See, this looks like this cattail slough gets. Yeah, this would be a great spot.
And even better late season when it's frozen. Where, you know, a majority of the food is gone, or, you know, it's been cut. So they move into some of those shelter points a little bit. As it gets colder, birds bunch up. Early season, birds don't really need a lot, so they can spread out wherever they want. But then you're also safer. So if you get on the edge of those cattails, you don't step down into, well, in the ice, it's got to be solid. You don't want to walk on ice. That's just a good food for thought, unless you know it's cold.
Yeah.
So But that's awesome, man. Ben, I really appreciate your time. I have learned a lot. I hope that everyone else has learned a lot. It's I'm gonna be on OnX Maps here pretty quick to start planning out the spots that we can do. We're gonna go South Dakota, and I talked to you about this a little bit, and we'll see if it ends up working out. So trying to swing up and make a loop when you're out in North Dakota. So we'll go up. I know it's a drive, but we'll go up, hunt a couple days, come back down, hunt a couple days, go home. So I hope that we can make that work. I had fun, man. I had fun with this, and it was really cool. I learned a ton. Thank you for being on here. Can you tell everybody how we can find you? I know we talked about it a little bit, but are you just on Instagram, or are you?
Yeah, if you go on Instagram and just under Ben Brettingen, and you can feel free to send me any messages, and then I answer everything. If you got any questions about, finding birds, etc., I'm happy to answer them. That's probably the best way to get in touch with me is through there, and I'm happy to answer any questions. So please don't hesitate just to send anything.
That's awesome. Hey, thank you again for your time. Thanks for being on with us.
Likewise.
We look forward to maybe getting to do this in the future. It'd be kind of cool to break some other stuff down, maybe go into depth a little bit more training specific or something else like that. But that is all the time we have for today, folks. We will catch you in the next episode. Goodbye.